and welcome once again to Talking Galloway podcast. I'm Angela from Galloway Retold.
And I'm Andy from Stravaiging with Andy.
And this episode we are talking to Bob Peace, who was a former policeman, mountain rescue man and Scoutmaster, amongst many other things.
So Angela, what have you been up to since our last episode?
Well, apart from doing an awful lot of general kind of like stuff for the podcast, you know, making promotions, which you've also done, and generally just promoting it. We went filming yesterday a little bit. We went down to Gelston actually a few days ago to look at Gelston Castle. But I'm going to have to get in touch with the people at Gelston because it's not very conducive to just walking up and taking photos or putting a drone up. They've got signs everywhere, even though it's a core path that you walk along. Mm-hmm. There's signs absolutely everywhere, basically saying stick to the core path. This is everywhere else. It's like holiday homes and a private residence. And if you want to take photographs of the castle, you must do it from the path unless you've got special permission. And it's like, okay, I will email them. So that is what I will do, because I would really like to get a drone shot driving over the castle, because it's actually quite fabulous. It was definitely quite the ostentatious building, just like his tomb as well. William Douglas, who founded Castle Douglas, was definitely quite a character. He was quite sort of single-minded about it as well, and quite the self-made man. Absolutely fascinating, and I will be doing a video about him and about Castle Douglas and how it was founded. So we went to Gelston, and then we went to Kelton just yesterday. It was a beautiful day yesterday. It was really good weather, so I got some good footage of the tomb, and Ian put the drone up. So we've got driving out towards Castle Douglas and everything from there. So it should look pretty good. I'm quite looking forward to it. But We've still got a lot yet to do, but yeah, working on it. And what about yourself? What have you been up to?
So obviously lots of editing. Currently we're putting out the Parton Heritage Trail walk. Originally planning on doing it as one video, but during the editing process, I'll split this into two because it's a bit further, and then that way I would say the walk out to the Borland Mott, but it's more of a scramble. So, and then battery issues. So I've got the walk out there. I may have to do some more voiceover at the end of it. I ran out of battery just as I got to the motte and realised that there's a motte in front of me.
Yes.
And then obviously with that video, paying a visit to one of Scotland's greatest scientists, the gravesite, James Clerk Maxwell. And yeah, so I've been working on that one and started working on to one of our greatest polyglots.
From
the area, and the monument for him, Murray's Monument.
He was a fascinating person. Do you know what's interesting about both of them? They were both absolute geniuses, and they both died in their 30s, which is tragic, to be honest with you. Although I have a vague suspicion that, like Marie Curie, James Clerk Maxwell, his science experiments may have hastened his end, because he was doing a lot of work into gases and things like that in a lab him and his wife created in their loft. Yeah. Not at Glenlair. Not at Glenlair. In Knightsbridge. Not in Edinburgh either. Yeah. No, but in Knightsbridge in London, as a matter of fact, they had a house there for many years, and they had a laboratory in the attic.
So when I was at university, I actually spent some of my lectures in the James Clerk Maxwell building, or GCat, as we call it. So it was always amusing to me that it was kind of as a lad from Galloway, up in the big city, and still there's a bit of home here. You know?
That's it. Well, he was a bit like that himself. I mean, they moved back down from Edinburgh when he was very little, and he was kind of taught at home until he was maybe 10 or 11, in which case he went to private school in Edinburgh, where he regularly was actually teased for the fact that he spoke with a really broad Galloway accent, unlike all of these other public school boys who obviously spoke with a very public school accent. And he never,
school and everything.
yeah, that's it. And he never let it go. So fascinating person. Him and his dad, actually. His dad was interesting too. But
I've gathered that from reading some of his books about him, and it's kind of like there's not that much written about the father, which I found bizarre, at least in what I've read. But there's possibly other things that I've not seen yet.
What was it? He made a patent for steam-driven laundry. No, it wasn't laundry. Steam-driven printing press.
Oh,
amongst other things, but he also tailored his clothes and James's clothes when James was a boy. He was just into everything. And the copper beaches that you see at Glenlair are the first copper beaches to have ever been brought to Scotland. They came straight from the very first copper beach was at Kew Gardens, and that was him as well. So I mean, he possibly if he'd have had the right education, he would have also been considered a genius of his time. But he certainly laid the foundations for James. So. Did a good job as a dad. Yeah.
Between him and the shepherd's boy.
Yes.
Alexander Murray, this area can produce
some really intelligent people. Absolutely.
Otherwise, we've started getting some nicer weather, so
yes,
finally out in the garden, kind of getting some of the gardening prep done. Turning compost heaps and
all that fun stuff. Yeah,
pleasantly surprised by the amount of earthworms that we're finding.
Oh, good. No flatworms.
Sadly, there was one.
Did you manage to get rid of it?
Yes.
Good. Because I know it's Kirkland Street's absolutely ridden with them.
I found one Australian or New Zealand flatworm, I'm not sure which, but hopefully that was an anomaly. But if there was plenty of good worms in there, I imagine it probably was an anomaly. Yeah, hopefully caught it before it's...
gotten to be a problem. Absolutely. Well done. Good stuff. Yeah, I've been out in the garden a lot as well. It's just been the weather for it. But it's also been the weather to get out with the camera, which is, finally.
It's kind of that thing of like, well, it's beautiful weather, I should go out and film. But I've got all this other thing I've been waiting for dry weather for.
I know, it's so good.
There's prediction of snow for Tuesday, Wednesday, so we've not really done any planting.
Yeah, that's it. Anybody out there who has done planting, I'm sorry.
This might be last week by the time it comes out. But
yeah, absolutely. So, going on from there, and you're our walking expert, do you want to go and tell us a little bit about Concerning Corpaths?
Yes. I don't actually have too many updates this month. The Pack Road, the gate at the Carnaval on the Pack Road, I've been informed is no longer padlocked. So I've not actually been up there myself in the last couple of weeks to confirm that, but it was somebody from the council that reached out to let me know that. And otherwise, we've also had Pat come in and inform us about the bridge on the path that goes... It's part of a couple of core paths. It goes part of the Donald Watson Walk that goes up the Mullock, but it also is the path that carries on down to New Galloway, along following the River Ken, or the Water Ken. There was ditching work put in there that broke through the bund last year. And over that ditch there's just this concrete slab, and when it gets wet it's rather treacherous. Yes. And I actually went down there yesterday, and it also looks like it's beginning to get a bit undermined. It's a bit concerning. This has been reported to the council. It is part of a couple of footpaths.
Yes.
So that's pretty much it for my updates for the core paths. Please, if you're aware of any issues with any core paths anywhere,
or any walks
in general that you'd like us to share, or not even just issues, anything that's been recently fixed or anything that's been opened up, any new routes that have been opened up, please get in touch with us and let us know, and we'll include it in the segment. You can get in touch with us either in the comments section or by emailing us at talkinggallowaypodcast@protonmail.com.
following on from that, I've got a few cultural gleanings for you this time. Probably quite a few. I'm going to start with, because I had forgotten about this, and we've been talking to Bob Peace, and it reminded me. There is currently showing at Dumfries Museum an exhibition of girl guiding in the region, which I really want to go to because I was a girl guide. And I know quite a few people who were involved in guides, and it has so much stuff. I keep seeing bits on Facebook, actually, so much stuff from the past, from girl guiding in the area, stuff about, I think stuff about Paul Willimon, and what was the name of the place, Netherard, which was owned by the Guiding Association, all kinds of like work that people had done for badges, all kinds of stuff, and it looks like it's really quite interesting. So I definitely recommend going to that because I'd like to get there.
And apropos of the place we're recording in as well.
Exactly, because this is where I went to guides, and actually to Venture Scouts as well.
Alright.
So we had the Venture Scouts in here, which we had quite an interesting little group for that, actually.
Funnily enough, Bob Peace's wife was your
she was my
guide leader.
Yeah, she was my guide leader indeed, and so she was quite important to me in a similar way that Bob was for you, particularly when it came to things like walking, because she's also an extremely keen walker and always has been. So yeah, good influence. Moving on though, for World Book Day, Dumfries and Galloway Libraries, which I should be able to say properly, have stocked copies of a new book published by SP Energy Networks and written by Emily Mackenzie, which is called Walter and Skye's Stormy Night. And it's an adventure story which is packed with good tips for coping with storms and power cuts. So it's really worth sharing with your kids. It's even got a wee checklist at the back, because I had to look at it, because it's in the library. I'm like, oh, what's this? It's got a lovely checklist at the back, beautifully illustrated checklist at the back of things that you might actually need in a storm. So that's really a really good little thing. And staying with children's books as well, Dolly Parton has this thing called the Imagination Library. If you've ever heard of it, you know what it is. If you haven't, you should go and Google it, because it's a wonderful bit of work that she's done. She's an amazing person, Dolly Parton. And the Imagination Library has for a number of years been teamed up with the Wheatley Foundation to distribute free books to kids who live in Wheatley homes across the region, and they have nearly reached the magical number of 50,000 books that they've distributed to children under 5 for free, which is really amazing. They expect to hit that in around about June. But additionally, Lorburn homes are now also about to start distributing Imagination Library books to kids who live in Lorburn houses. So I think that's quite a good thing.
Awesome.
Yeah. But also, yes, last time we were talking about the Kirkcudbright Book Festival, and it did really, really well this time.
Awesome.
Its numbers were up 23% on last year, which they've got a new format, and that's obviously been really quite useful for them. So watch out, Wigton, because Kirkcudbright is coming for you, in fact. At the festival, though, I thought this was quite interesting, Kirkcudbright Fringe launched a new book which is about the history of St Cuthbert's Wanderers, the little team, the team from Kirkcudbright. So that could be, a nice little bit of local sporting history. I know there's books about Gretna, who obviously sadly no longer exist, and a few other teams in the region. I think they might be the oldest team in the South West Scotland League, but I'd have to double check that again. And Kirkcudbright, very busy place, Kirkcudbright, there's lots and lots going on, is making a bid for the UK Town of Culture in 2028. They're asking for feedback from residents, local businesses and community groups, and you can email them to let them know what you think. I'll put the email address down below. They particularly want to know what you think makes Kirkcudbright special, what stories the town should be telling about itself, and what cultural facilities or activities that are missing from the town, and what barriers people are facing getting involved with arts and culture in the town. So drop on the line if you have any thoughts on any of those things, let them know. They also want to know, though, how you think becoming a town of culture could actually benefit people in the town. and what kind of lasting legacy you might hope it would leave. So if you've any thoughts, just drop them a line. Apollo Theatre at Whithorn, which is Scotland's smallest theatre, is they have just announced their 30th anniversary programme, which is, so they've been running for 30 years now, which is awesome. And there's lots of interesting stuff in there. I checked out the programme, quite a few music events, an interesting looking medical comedy drama, which could be quite fun, and some stand-up as well. So you check that out on their website, which again I'll link below. You can see what's on, and it's definitely worth going. I think there's only like 46 seats. It's in a converted barn, but it sounds really nice. I've never been. I think I might like to go. But the big bit of news, the really big bit of news, at least to my mind, because I'm like a total history nerd and a big fan of green transportation, there's going to be a meeting in Dumfries to discuss the reopening of the Stranraer to Dumfries line. And that's taking place on the 25th of April. It's going to be held at Dumfries Day Centre between 2 and 4 p.m. and is organised by the British Regional Transport Association. The meeting will consider how to create a properly coordinated campaign to reintroduce rail to Galloway. And speakers will include Green Party campaigner Laura Moody, who I actually think is standing for election for our constituency on the 7th of May at the Scottish General Election, and Linda Dorwood from the Labour Party, and Kirsty Dunsmore from Swestrans, which is South West Scotland Transport Initiative or something like that it's called. It's just an arm's length from the council, which deals with basically public transport planning. For more info on the meeting, you would need to contact Scott Borthwick, who also wrote quite a comprehensive plan, which is available online as well, and we'll give you the contact details for that down below. But that's it. That's my cultural gleanings for this month.
And we'll share a link to the introduction for the.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
In the description.
Yeah.
I've actually had a read through it. It's interesting. It's basic because it's also talking about going to Kirkcudbright as well. Funnily enough, the old branch line. Obviously, the old railway line had a branch line down to Kirkcudbright, and then the one that came up through Parton and across to New Galloway Station and Gatehouse Station. Yes,
New Galloway Station at Mossdale, Gatehouse Station at Conundrum, but there was more than one Gatehouse Station. It's quite an interesting story, that, because there was two different competing rail companies, and one was based on there was the Kirkcudbright Line Company, and then there was the main Portpatrick Line Company, and they couldn't agree who was going to have Gatehouse Station. So they both had Gatehouse Station for a while, so there was two.
Okay, I hadn't heard that one.
The name was changed a few times.
My personal hope with it is that they do it.
Oh, absolutely.
Figure out a way to do it. I know there's houses on certain parts of the old line.
Yeah.
But I also hope they do it in a way that they also create open walking routes alongside it. Because right now, certain sections of it, fantastic walks through the region.
There are, yes. I mean, there's obviously the Kirkcudbright branch line, there's that lovely walk out to Thrieve, which we would lose, but I wonder whether Alistair Livingston would feel that it was a worthy loss, considering it be bringing back the rails. Interesting.
If we can have it and then have a footpath beside it, even better.
Yeah, that would be better. Because it's not, I mean, it won't, you'd hope it was a relatively busy line. It definitely, there's hope that a line that goes to Stranraer and Cairnryan will mean that they will be able to upgrade the port at Cairnryan as well. So it's more than just a benefit for tourism, it's a benefit for a whole bunch of transportation, and actually could help with the congestion on the A75 a massive amount, because you get so many lorries off it.
Yeah, that was it. They shut down the passenger aspect of it in 65. But the freight carried on running for another couple of years.
I think everything on that line went.
I know some of the lines that kept the freight going for a while.
Well, there's the freight line that goes to Waterside in between in Ayrshire, between Patna and Dimley Ellington. That still sometimes has trains on it. You still see them.
I used to work in the maintenance for that line.
Oh yeah.
I was just in the office, but it was the guy who which basically supervised the lines between Shanrar and Ayr, also had that branch line and the branch line out to Barassi.
Ah, yeah.
But so it's, I've actually walked some of that line. Nice walk along there. But,
Yeah, well, railway lines are lovely and flat.
Exactly.
So it makes nice, easy walking. And
Great
of course, the
cycle routes as well.
Yeah, great cycle routes. And of course, the walk out to Loch Squirrel is a great walk, but I think I'd prefer to do it on the train. Definitely. So I think that would be a very worthy thing.
In today's episode, we're talking to Bob Peace, who we've both known for a long time. He was our local Bobby as we grew up, as well as being the Scoutmaster and all things outdoorsy.
Everything from mountain rescue to squirrel rescue, as a matter of fact. We sat down with him earlier and had an absolutely fascinating, wide-ranging discussion. He's a fascinating character. Really hope you enjoy the interview.
Welcome, Bob Peace, to the podcast.
Thank you.
Hi. Well, thank you for joining us today. So we're just going to sort of do some warm-up questions first, just to get us all going.
It's fine.
And my first question to you is, can you remember what your first impressions of Galloway were?
It's a long time ago, to be honest. I remember with my parents coming through New Galloway way back. I was still at primary school, I think. We were going on a holiday to the Ayrshire coast, Girvan, I believe, and I just enjoyed it. Strange thing is, what I remember doesn't now exist.
Oh yeah.
Because the road used to wind its way up the side of Loch Ken, and now that windy bit, or those windy bits, have all been straightened out. You can still see, if you look carefully, where a lot of those were. So it's had an interesting turn of fate, you know, from that time to coming and living here a few years ago.
So how long have you been in?
I moved to Dumfries and Galloway in 1973, but I moved to Dalry in 1987, July 1987.
Just actually just about a year before I moved in.
So on that note, so we both grew up with you as a local police officer. You were also my Scoutmaster. So I've got an awful lot of experiences through the whole area. Is there any that you can share with us? Any memorable stories that you're able to share?
Memorable stories
related to Galloway?
Of policing?
Policing, scouting, just any
My goodness me, there's so many things that I've done and enjoyed over the years. I think some of the memorable events within my police career are unfortunately memorable for the wrong reasons. They're sort of, shall we say, traumatic. Certainly traumatic for the people involved or the families involved. So, you know, I think that's a topic that we don't need to particularly address. But there is one interesting little event within my policing here in the village, which might fall quite nicely into the sort of history of the Glenkens, and that was the sudden death of Johnny Sterling.
Oh yeah.
Johnny Sterling and his friend had driven down from Sawn, where they stayed, and they'd parked their car at what was formerly the youth hostel at Kendoon. They then cycled up over the High Bridge of Ken and then turned right and cycled all the way to Carsphairn, and then they took the A702, the other road, back to Dalry, and were cycling from Dalry back to their car at Kendoon. Sadly, Johnny took a fatal cardiac arrest as he was cycling up the road between the Ardoch road end and Todstone. And now at the roadside there is a small granite memorial to Johnny, who if my memory is correct, he passed away on very early in May, maybe the 3rd of May, 1992. And Johnny's friend used to cycle down from Sawn to pay his respects at that memorial. And on a few occasions, he actually cycled a bit further and came down to visit me, and he would have a cup of tea and then head back up. And when he got home, he didn't stop. He cycled another 3/4 of a mile further along the road. So that meant that when he then turned around, he'd done an extra 1.5 miles. Now, why do you think he did 1.5 miles?
Rounding off the trip, rounding
off the trip, indeed, because his journey was 98.5 miles. So that by doing that little bit extra, it gave him another 1.5 miles, which made it the nice round number 100 miles.
Oh yeah.
I think it was quite nice that he used to come down and do that.
I know that is, yeah.
But he was, the last time he came down, he was 80.
Wow.
When he cycled, and he was still capable of cycling 100 miles when he was 80 years old. So there's hope for us yet.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I admire that, definitely.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've all been there with rounding up the numbers a wee bit, just going, I'm just that close to it, might as well just go that little bit extra.
Just that wee bit. Make it tidy. Yeah, absolutely.
So obviously you've also spent a lot of time up in the hills around here and just generally hiking around the area. Is there any favourite locations, any kind of places that you particularly enjoy to, that your go-to
I think it's a question I've been asked on many occasions, to be honest, and I think the answer that I give is different every time. I often think that when I'm standing on a hill, that I'm fortunate to actually be there. Fortunate to be able to hear the birds or the noises that are there, the rippling of water, the wind, and pick out what I'm seeing, the hills, the forests, the lochs, the distant views. But this morning as I was walking around, most mornings I would just walk around what we call locally the round. So from the village down around Milton Park and back into the village. And as you go down the road from the B7000 down towards Milton Park, it's quite stunning really, because you've got just off to your left at sort of you've got Black Craig or Cairnsmore of Dee. Straight ahead of you, you've got Waterside, and then round to your right, you've got the most of the Rins of Kells, and in the middle distance, you've got sort of Forest Estate, and then you've got Earlston Loch right in the foreground, and it's quite stunning. And every morning, it's different. Yes. The sky is different, the reflection on the loch is different, and I just think that we're very fortunate to live where we live. Yes. And some people who live here do appreciate it. But sadly, I think there are one or two people who perhaps don't fully appreciate what they're seeing. But thankfully, we do get visitors and they appreciate it, which is quite welcoming.
It's the world we live in, where everybody's so rushed nowadays, and they don't just take that moment to appreciate what's right in front of them and actually enjoy the views. And yes, I do that walk on a regular basis as well, and I think we all do. It's also, when I asked the question there, I'm like, I wouldn't be able to answer that question either. It's like half the time I'm recording one of my walks, I'm just like, okay, this is now right up there in my favourite walks, and it's then like my favourite list of favourite walks must be pretty epic right now.
you've got a lot of favourite walks.
I've got quite a lot of favourite walks around here as well. I mean, it's just beautiful, and
I mean, I quite like one of the walks I sort of created, if you like, was the 5 at Dalry, and that is sort of the 5 hills of Mullach. If you go in a sort of anti-clockwise direction, you would go sort of Mullach, Waterside, Dunveer, Glenlee, and then, well, it's not, people call it Shield, but it's actually White Hill, the one with the communications mast behind Shield Farm. And that, from each of those hills, you can see Dalry from a different angle. So it puts it into a nice perspective. It's quite an enjoyable walk.
That's quite nice. I always love the view from Waterside. I mean, I love the view from the top of the Mullach as well, but there's something about the view from Waterside when you can see down the loch and all the way down to Squirrel.
That's right. You see the whole of the sort of watershed, really, the Ken Valley.
For me,
it's nice.
Glenlee Hill, and you've just got the actual shape of Dalry just laid out perfectly in front of you as well. And it's kind of, because from the other angles, it's kind of bits are hidden, but from Glenlee Hill, it's just like, you can just see the entire.
But we're fortunate as well, that we've got Glenlee walking up the side of the burn, the waterfalls. That's quite stunning. Garach, all the walks that are within Garach Estate, and Forest Estate. If you take away the walking and go cycling, and a half decent mountain bike, or nowadays people are going on towards gravel bikes, and all the roads in Forest Estate, they're superb for cycling around. It's we're really blessed with what we've got on our doorstep.
That's it, absolutely. I know that you're actually quite interested in a lot of sort of like historical stuff. I mean, we've stopped and talked on the road when we've met on the Milton Park on the round about various things, and we're definitely going to talk about the Spitfire later, because that's absolutely fascinating. But is there anything particularly like of the local history that fascinates you now?
I quite like to sort of, when I'm wandering around, you come across ruins, you come across the old schools of coarse glass, and you think, well, a school, and you look round about you, and there's no houses. And there are lots of schools that are former schools. They don't exist anymore. They're just ruins. And similarly, dwellings. Way up in the hills, some of them are now used as bothies, Dunskeen, White Wagon, Bacil of the Bush. These are all names that are quite familiar with hill walkers. But there are other houses, Kilnair up behind Lochinvar, and some of the properties were recently vacated when I moved here, and one of the things I never got round to actually doing it, and I'm quite sad that I didn't, and I had the idea it would be so much easier now with digital photography, but I'm talking about lugging an SLR camera around, of taking pictures of the old dwelling and finding people, because there were still people connected to these buildings with a strong connection. 30 years ago. Now, sadly, these people have passed on, so I can't now retrieve my idea and go and have a conversation with them and record things.
That's a shame.
But some of the houses, Margree. I remember going into Margree and taking pictures of the staircase, and the treads of the staircase were full of owl pellets, because there were some barn owls living in there. Now, of course, Margree has now been totally refurbished. Many years ago, it was refurbished and all landscaped and everything. And other properties, Darnor, you used to be able to walk past Darnor and never see it because it was hidden within standing Sitka spruce. And at that time, there were things, little items of rusty sort of furniture and things within there. And then over time, the trees were felled, and now there's only one gable end of Darnor actually standing. So it's this transition from what it used to be to modern times. Shield of Castlemaddy, and I think you will have been to Shield of Castlemaddy when it was standing. We did a litter pick at Shield of Castlemaddy. That has now, it doesn't exist. It's just a gravel footprint of where it used to be, and that was a bothy. So it's this aspect of change from, and the change is ongoing. This building that we're in was a school.
Yes.
And then it moved across the road, and now, there's a question mark over the secondary element of that school. So, that change is still going.
Yeah, no, it keeps on kind of rolling on, doesn't it? It never stops, the change.
Never stops.
Never stops.
It's also, like, as you say, just walking through and finding these places, is that the buildings that I think was a lodge, going by one map I found, just by Loch Howie.
Yes.
And there's kind of like the sort of old ruins there, and it's kind of, I was trying to find information on it, and there was just very little left, and that's kind of another reason why we're doing what we want to do, is try and...
Lagan Lodge?
I think it's
Lagan Lodge.
It's a wonderful... it used to have some substantial beech trees growing within it.
Right.
I think they've been cut down now, but there's a bow-shaped room on it, and again, I sort of discovered the ruins of Lagan when I went round there on my mountain bike many years ago, and that we've just talked about change over the time that I can remember, from first seeing it to what it's like now. Bits of it have fallen in, and the lintel of a window has collapsed. And it's a shame in a way, but it's what happens, really. Change.
It's the archaeology of the future,
Well, it is, and no doubt, somebody will come along and do a dig and wax lyrical about something that
something that we think is quite normal.
Some bottle top that was left lying around from somebody having their lunch a few years later.
That's right.
Type thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of anecdotes that sums up Galloway? Like something that's particularly Galloway?
That's a...
It's a tricky one just to throw out.
Yeah.
No, I really don't. I think that just that little ditty, the Bonnie Gallowa.
Oh yes.
That sums it up, and the late Tommy Edgar, when he wrote that is what Galloway is about, I think, and
Yep.
It's Bonnie.
It's Bonnie, and it's Bonnie, and it's a quiet little corner of the world where I think, although we do have change, it sort of happens slowly. So
yes. I often think when you drive up the M6 and you're sort of heading, I'm heading home, and you see the sign on the M6 that's got Glasgow and Edinburgh, and there's not much difference between the distance at that point between the two. There's I could be selfish and think, I found Galloway, and I like it the way it is. I don't want it to be spoilt too much. So I don't want a big sign saying, "Hey guys, turn left and find this wonderful piece of countryside over there." We are stuck out left, and everybody heads up. They're going to the Highlands, and they're going to Glasgow, Edinburgh, and further north, Aberdeen, Stirling, etc. And they don't come to us unless they're going to Stranraer, Cairnryan to head into Northern Ireland. So, yes, let's leave it as it is.
Keep it secret.
It's funny because I was filming out at Murray's Monument a couple of weeks ago and started talking to these lads that had come over from Newcastle, and I was kind of sort of speaking to them, and it's like, so how do you how do you know about the area? And one of the boys was like, I was actually driving up to the Highlands and decided that I'd take the long way around, and just drove through the area and absolutely loved it. And then next year came back with his mates, and they come back every year, and it's just come out, camp somewhere, go for walks around the area, and absolutely just love the area and kind of.
Yeah,
but,
a lot of people do seem to find it by accident, don't they?
Rather than actual kind of knowing of it.
Yeah, they kind of trip over it. That's it.
Indeed.
Yeah. So I already mentioned about the Spitfires. Do you want to talk a bit about how you were involved with finding the Blue Peter?
Well, I didn't actually find the aircraft. So Blue Peter Spitfire AD 540. Many years ago, I was aware of the crash site, but at that time there seemed to be little evidence of where the memorials actually were. And the one that is placed at the site where David Hunter Blair actually sort of landed, crashed into the ground, his parachute failed to open. And that sits on the shoulder of Dougland Hill. Now, if we go back in time, there was no track around there, and the easiest way to have found it was by going to the sheep fank and then going uphill from the sheep fank. But now it's much easier because there is a track and there is a small cairn at the edge of the track. So finding that is relatively easy. Now, finding the other memorial, which is where the plane was actually sort of buried, at the time of the crash, they decided for, I think, security reasons, they would sort of bury the aircraft or parts of it. And it remained buried. And then eventually, 51 years to the day, so that would be, it crashed on the 23rd of May, 1942. I'm trying to think of the name of the man who found it. It's in there somewhere. Anyway,
It'll come back.
It'll come back. He found it 51 years to the day, and then it was carefully sort of removed. And when it was removed, because of the Blue Peter name, the Blue Peter TV program, the children's program, were quite interested in it, and they came and they did a film of the retrieval of that aircraft, and I believe that's now available to watch. The original that program is available on YouTube.
Yeah. Quite a lot of
The aircraft itself has been a bit refurbished, and it now sits in the Dumfries Aviation Museum. And at that site, they created a little memorial, and it's only a stone, a small stone, a little brass plaque, and there was a piece of the aircraft epoxied onto the stone. Now, back in 2020, I was going to be leading a walk with Newton Stewart Walking Festival. And it was going to take in this memorial and the other one and visit Clennock Bothy, which sits relatively midway between the two. So to familiarise myself with exactly where I was going to take these people, I didn't want to look silly. So I went and I found this stone. Not very easy because it was within heather and blaeberries. The stone itself is covered in algae and moss and things, so it was well camouflaged. Found the stone and took some photographs and satisfied myself that I knew where it was. Now, of course, 2020, what happened in 2020? COVID came along, and that walk, the whole walking festival, was postponed to the following year, and the whole programme was moved into 2021. Now, 2021, it was still a bit no-go, so we shift to 2022. So 2 years had now passed from me sort of refreshing my memory. So I decided, well, I'll go back and make sure that I know where I'm going. And to my horror, when I got there, the countryside had changed.
Oh, no.
The ownership of the land had changed, and the new owner decided to put down some trees. And to facilitate the trees, they bulldozed a track. And I'm standing there with my phone, with a photograph taken 2 years earlier, lining it up with forestry and saying, well, it should be here, etc., etc. And paced up and down, backwards and forwards, and couldn't find it. It was roughly where the track was, or it was in that area. I was really quite annoyed. Anyway, that precipitated a lot of correspondence, phone calls, and I made a bit of a stink, let's say. And a couple of days later, having received various phone calls and emails, I started to sort of think, hey, wait a minute, I better make sure I'm absolutely spot on here, otherwise I'm going to look rather stupid. So I went back, and on that occasion, there were some workmen doing some fencing. So I spoke with the workmen and asked them if they sort of knew anything about the memorial that should be just up the road, up the track that was built. And one of them seemed quite enthusiastic, and he said that, well, yeah, he had heard some mumblings in the office, and then he started asking me questions. Did I know where it was? And I said, well, I knew, I am the guy that stirred this controversy. So he said, well, look, show me where you think it should be. So he invited me to jump on the back of his quad bike, and off we went, bouncing along the track. And I said, look, it should be somewhere here. So we, went, and he said, well, I'll find it. So I was careful to say to him, look, this is not it's not a huge monument that you're looking for. It's just, rather bigger than a football, but not much bigger. So anyway, he was quite confident that, so we jumped back on the quad bike and went back to where they were doing the work, and I walked on, thinking, well, will he, won't he? However, much to my surprise and happiness, I got correspondence within a few days that the monument had been revealed.
That's impressive.
So I went back, up there, and yes, there was lovely scraped earth, and the stone was in place with a slight screeve across the brass plaque. Well, I'm saying brass, it's metal, might not be brass. But the little piece of the aircraft that was epoxied onto the stone isn't there. The good side of all this, in actual fact, is that it is now much easier to find. I haven't actually been for probably 18 months. So the bare earth, obviously, as they scraped away, that will now have grown up. So it won't just be as easy to see. But I do intend going up there very shortly to see what it's like now, and maybe take some more photographs. And so that's, the history of Blue Peter. There's lots of little connections, I think, as well, because, David Hunter Blair, his family home was almost within. If he,
it was around Kingsmore of Carsphairn.
Well, that's right. It's but these are things that happen. I mean, you know, and I think we should recognise them. And there are many aircraft all over the Galloway Hills that crashed during wartime, and even in peacetime there's been a few incidents.
So I think actually just over your shoulder is the book for plane crashes in the Glenkens. Will be.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Speaking to Paul later in the year, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes. He's done quite a lot of research on that. He's also done quite a lot of research on the war memorials as well.
So it's funny mentioning trying to find it, because a few months ago you and I were up trying to find the cross slabs up at Bardenoch.
That's right. Yes.
And we won't admit how long we wandered around trying to find them.
Well,
sometimes
the thing is as well, when I first went to find this memorial, I hadn't a clue what I was looking for. Nobody could tell me what it looked like, and I spent quite a while, and I didn't find it, and had to come away. You know, time was against me, and it was on the second visit that I actually found it. But I walked backwards and forwards, up and down, left and right. Yeah. But once you know what you're looking for, it is much easier to find.
So I've got vague memories, because I was quite young when we were doing these walks, going up Cairnsmore, Carsphairn. And I seem to remember that I would have been with you and possibly the scouts, or just general kind of group of us going up for a hike. But I do vaguely remember like there was things like bits of metal around that people were thinking was possible airframe and things. Is that a false memory, or is that something that was possible?
I'm not sure that it would be Cairnsmore or Carsphairn. There's more likely to be Cairnsmore or Flute.
Okay.
If indeed your memory was Cairnsmore. But even on Catstrand, if you go up Catstrand, there's two sites fairly close to the summit where there are still bits of aircraft.
Aye.
And what people should remember is that all these sites are actually protected by law. You know, technically you should not take any of those parts away. It really is a sort of war grave for these people. And I think the other thing to remember as well is that sometimes people will collect little bits of an aircraft and move it to where there might be a memorial. And the assumption is that because there's a memorial fairly close to where there's some wreckage, that the wreckage belongs to that memorial. But it may not be. It might be from a different aircraft, because there are quite a few in relatively close proximity. And you know, if you think about that, there is a certain logic to it, because if you're going to crash, invariably these crashes happen because the pilot, they didn't have the sophisticated instrumentation that we have in modern aircraft. They flew by what they could see, and a lot of them, and particularly Cairnsmore of Fleet, because there were so many airfields down on the sort of Solway area, they knew that there were hills there, but if the cloud was low, they just didn't know how close they were to them.
Yes.
And fortunately, I mean, there are several aircraft that crashed that we tend not to know about as much, where they'd simply just hit the ground and bounced, and all the people survived.
Yes.
So it's not something that we tend to sort of worry about. It's only those that involve the loss of life that we have a significant record of. But yes, it's something that the Galloway Hills are slightly famous for.
Yes. It's the fact that you've got that small conglomeration of hills that are all relatively high in that area,
That's
and then
right.
and then of course between the weather coming off the sea and the weather coming off the hills, you just get wild weather.
And low population in the area means is you particularly popular for practice as well. So,
Well, it is, and that's why we ended up with the last sort of military one, which was about 19th of December
77?
Something like that. It's
79.
79.
It's in Paul's book, but just so we'll check that later. For sure.
We mentioned already that you're a local scoutmaster, which I know involved a lot of camps and hiking. So is there any recommendations you give for people going out in the hills, especially if they've got kids with them, like any hints or tips?
That sort of experience.
I think that a lot of people are reticent to take children on the hills. I have no problem with taking children on the hills. My own two kids were carried in a carrier, and the carriers that are available now are much more comfortable, I'm sure, than the ones that my kids got carried on the hills. Obviously, you've got to apply common sense, and you've got to keep them warm and all the rest of it. But I think, for the walking child, if you keep them interested, keep them focused, give them reasons, not simply say, well, we're going because we're going to the top. That's not really a reason. You need to have a focus, like pick a special top, something that's got something there that they can interact with, whether it's an aircraft crash site or something that is going to be a bit more than a little pile of stones. A non-route, if you can keep them active, keep them occupied, collect pine cones, look at different flowers, look at different leaves on trees. All these things are it's a learning process for the child, but it keeps them occupied and keeps them going. I remember standing on the side of the path going up onto Ben Nevis many years ago, and along came a man with a young boy, and he would be probably about 6 years of age, and he was well kitted out. He had his own little rucksack, and he was a little mountaineer. And the way he was going, and he was determined that he was going to get to the top of Ben Nevis. And some while later, I was on Ben Nevis on this occasion to help with an ultra Ironman type event, and that boy had been to the top of Ben Nevis, and he was on his way down, and his little chest was puffed out. He'd achieved what he wanted to do. Now, I'm not going to say that every child of that age can get to the top of Ben Nevis. It's just like, some adults can achieve a little bit more than others. I'm never ever going to swim across the channel, because I'm not a brilliant swimmer, but I can get to the top of the top of mountains. And I think it's the same with kids. If you've got kids that are interested, don't stem that enthusiasm. Keep them going, and it'll lead to many things. You mentioned scouts, and I've got several scouts or former scouts who I remember they weren't all that enthusiastic at sort of going on the hills, but they came, and we did what we did. We played various games and had sort of contests, and those guys have now completed all the Munros. There's several that I can think of have achieved all the Munros. One guy is climbing in the Alps, and I'm not going to say that I am responsible for their enthusiasm, but maybe I've played a wee part in developing that germ of an enthusiasm.
Yeah, so certainly when my time in guides with Kath, your wife, definitely kindled a love walking in the hills in me, because I mean, it's just part of nature. It's how it makes you feel small and big at the same time when you stand at the top of a hill.
Yeah.
You can see so far, but you can realise that you're just a tiny part of the world.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's a profound experience.
I think, different people, when they're standing, let's say, at the top of it, they see different things. You might be looking and seeing things that are particularly interesting to you, whereas they are looking at something else which has an interest to them. And there's nothing wrong in that.
Oh, no.
We're all individuals. If we were all the same, what a dull place,
100%.
what a dull place it would be to live.
Definitely. No, you've got to have that variation, haven't you? Yeah, different strokes and all that.
So you're part of an organisation called Dagmar, or you were part of an organisation called Dagmar. Can you tell us what it stands for and what it's about?
Yes, Dagmar stands for Dumfries and Galloway Mountains and Rain. Now, yeah, okay, it's always worth a smile. But Dagmar is what exists, if you like, from something that I and another police officer created as a result of the helicopter crash, the Merlin helicopter that crashed on Black Creek. Back in, whenever was it, about 1983, September 1983. And at that time, there'd been a few incidents where the police had been involved in going into hill situations. And myself and my colleague thought that things weren't just quite right, that it shouldn't be that way, that you were putting people who had no experience into a situation that they were uncomfortable in, and it was the thinking of the police at the time that you are a police person, you are a policeman, you are omnicompetent, you can do anything. Well, sadly, we were just human beings. Anyway, to try and address that problem and educate some of our colleagues about what the hills were and let them have experience of navigating in hills and what conditions were like, conditions underfoot, the temperature, etc. We formed a hill walking section within the recreation club, if you like, of the existing police force. The idea of that was that each month we would take a group of policemen out and introduce them to different hills within Dumfries and Galloway. And over a fairly short space of time, we covered the main hill areas and given them some experience of that. Then we started going a little bit further afield into the Lake District, into the Southern Highlands. It developed arms and legs, and civilian support staff asked if they could come along, or could I bring my wife, could I bring my girlfriend, could I bring my son, blah, blah, blah. And it is still going under this wonderful name, Dagmar. And it became Dagmar, I can't remember when it became Dagmar, to be honest, but maybe at least 15 years ago. And more recently, the Dagmar became affiliated to Mountaineering Scotland.
Right.
And I suppose simplistically, the reason it was affiliated with Mountaineering Scotland is insurance cover. So we now have sort of insurance cover if we're going up there. But Dagmar now is open for anybody. Anybody can join and come along. And out of the original members who joined, I think I'm the only one that still goes. There are one or two other former serving police officers. I don't know that there's anybody at the moment who is still a serving member that comes along. And I suppose that's indicative of, we go back to this wonderful word change. People's pastimes, how they manage their time, all changes, and these people perhaps don't want to go hill walking, or they just go on their own. And, that's something else that I think sometimes that if I'm on my own walking the hills, you're not making any noise. So you see more wildlife, whereas if you're going with a group and there might be 12 of you, or on a good day, there might be 15.
Yes.
So you're making 15 times as much noise. So you don't see the same things that you may do if you're just on your own. So I'm quite proud of the fact that that's something that I was an initial part of, and that it's still going after all those years.
That's good. That is good. And it is actually a very good idea, I would say myself, to have police officers familiar with that sort of condition. Because if you're ever going to be called out to do something like that.
Well, the other element of it is that technically when somebody goes missing in the hills, it's the police who have that authority, or they are the agency that are responsible for finding them. But now they've cascaded that down to mountain rescue, because it's so much easier for the police service to throw a little bit of money every year towards mountain rescue than to train their own staff to the level that members of mountain rescue do, because it's not about the simple cost of putting money on the table to train somebody. While that person is being trained, she is not walking the street, driving the police car, responding to incidents. It's that sort of downtime, which is difficult to sort of manage. So now it's down to mountain rescue, and they're hugely competent and trained, and have wonderful access to technology now, drones and computers and things. It's very different from when I first got involved in a mountain rescue.
And of course you were involved with mountain rescue for many years.
Yes, my first involvement was 50 years ago when I was working in Upper Nithsdale. And I can confidently say it was 50 years ago, because it was just 2 days before Sarah, my daughter, was born.
Yes.
And I think, from that time, I've been involved up until, 4 years ago, 2022, I think I decided that enough was enough.
Which is always fair.
Yes, but as I say, it's changed a lot from the days when it was just a case of shepherds and forestry workers, people who had a livelihood in the hills. They were the ones who you would call upon to give you some assistance. And then both Moffat and I think Moffat was formed a couple of years before Galloway. And then they quite rightly, got to grips with what they needed to have, and the expertise, make it more professional than just a bunch of. And I don't mean to denigrate the shepherds. They were brilliant people. They knew their hill. But the problem is, yes, they knew their hill, but they didn't know somebody else's hill as much. So it's a case of, if you are competent at map reading and compass work, you can go
anyhow.
You take your skills where those skills are needed. Whereas the shepherd, he could tread up sort of his hill, and he could recognise every stone, and he knew where he was. But put him on a different hill, and he may not be as competent.
So you need a shepherd for each hill.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. A lot of shepherds.
A lot of shepherds.
So,
Of course, I don't know if there's as many shepherds now as there used to be because of all the automation and everything that goes on now.
not at all,
With
yeah.
the quad bikes and everything, you don't just quite have as many.
it's a lot of the small farms are basically now just part of large farms, and they'll race around on their quad bikes and other vehicles, and there's definitely nowhere near as many shepherds and tied to the land or anything like that.
No, it's not. Definitely not.
The challenge around this area, like Blackcraig, which one? It's kind of, we've got so many Blackcraigs in the area, and somebody contacts and says, "I've injured myself. I'm on Blackcraig," and that's all the notification you get. Now, you've mentioned you kind of put together training processes for people to try and figure some of this out in the past. So.
You can create now, if technology, and I'm not going to sit here and profess to be a huge technician, but there are ways now, if somebody makes a phone call with a mobile phone, and they don't necessarily know where they are, you can, by working out where that signal has actually come from, so they triangulate from different communication masts, and like pinpoint where they are, and if you're still in contact with that person, you can then sort of think, right, that person is standing there. If they've got visibility, you can ask them, well, can you see a body of water? Oh, yes. Well, is it long? Is it round? Is it got, what's the shape of it? And that confirms that, they're going to be there. And I remember one particular incident where someone, they didn't know where they were sort of misplaced, if you like, and the conversation was developed, and there was a suspicion that we knew where they were, and the leading question was, well, what are you standing on? And it was a bit like, oh, well, the track. Yes, but tell us what the track, what does the track look like? And they said, well, there's a lot of like broken shells. I was saying, right, don't move, we'll be with you very shortly. and within, a very short space of time, the vehicle was there, and they were astounded. How did you know where we were? And because at that time, the Forestry Commission were putting down crushed scallop shells, and the purpose was that it was to try and reduce the acidification in the forest by adding the sort of calcium shells, trying to neutralise the acidity, and they were putting these, spreading them out, and then the trucks would crush them, and the rain would sort of leach. And these people were quite amazed that we knew where they were from simply asking a few questions like, what are you standing on? So there are, and this all goes down to local knowledge, and that's why if you, to be a useful, in my opinion anyway, to be a useful addition to a mountain rescue team, you need to have local knowledge. I'm not going to say that's the prerequisite, local knowledge. You still need to know how to find your way around with that map and compass. Smartphones are getting smarter, but smartphones still need a battery, still need power.
And the signal.
And the signal. If you haven't got these things, a map works. There are all sorts of things that we can say now that the person who they go into the hills because they've got their smartphone and they know where they're going, and they might even have a tracker, but then the battery goes in the tracker, and then the little dot stops moving, and somebody says, "Oh, what's happening?" And they get on the phone, but the person's back in the car park and driving home. But because his tracker battery went flat, it stays where the last signal
Yeah.
was. And
Oh, you've
technology.
You've had a few experiences of very similar, but
Happened when I got water into the port on my phone and lived up a Bardnoch, funnily enough, down the old Pack Road, and my phone just went into a shutdown mode with the alarm going off constantly. And my mum just keeps an eye out, as mums do.
yeah.
And she's just like sort of saying, "Hey, it's not moved much," and then I'm suddenly turning up at the door, and it's
It's but most of these incidents, have a happy ending.
Yes.
Sometimes they don't, but that's the way of things.
I remember going up Ben Nevis and seeing people going up in flip-flops and things like that. I mean, you get silly people that go up into the hills as well. There was that story as well a few years ago of people, was it Anne Chaurand, who had gone up on the thingy.
On the chairlift.
Yeah, on the chairlift, and then gone walking in shorts and t-shirt and sandals with a plastic bag and gone walking off into the hills and got completely lost.
Yeah.
So there's always the daft ones, isn't there?
Well, there is, and that that applies, I suppose, to any any sport, whether it's walking, cycling, canoeing. It happens. It's part of life.
Yeah, it's part of that variety of people.
Well, yeah, indeed.
So you're retired now, obviously, which you've actually been retired for quite a while, haven't you? From policing.
Far too long.
But you're very active still, obviously. One of the things that you do that I get an awful lot of joy from is the feeding of the red squirrels around the area. I love walking past there. It's like every day we go up to the top of the hill. If it's our shortest walk, if we haven't got much time for anything else, and we stop at the squirrels at the top of the hill there, and just to see if there's any. And most days you don't see them, but when you do, it's always nice. And so, how did you get involved with doing that? What made you decide to?
Well, it's a while ago now, probably 14, 15 years ago. At the time, Saving Scotland's Red Squirrels, which is the sort of governing body, if you like, that looked after red squirrels within Scotland, it's an arm of Scottish Wildlife Trust. They were running out of funding and they decided that they really needed to continue their work, but if they could cascade that down to a more local level, then that would be helpful. The good news was at the time that they did get more funding, and then they were able to continue for a good number of years. So that's how I got involved, and initially with what they called the Spring Survey, which is happening around about this time of year. Obviously, it's Spring Survey, and that was simply monitoring whether there were red squirrels, grey squirrels, or whatever was taking bait out of a squirrel feeder. There was a little sticky pad, which when the squirrel opened the lid, or whatever, opened the lid to get the food, it interacted with the sticky pad and hairs, and then you analysed the hairs and determined whether it was, and you got pine martins and various things. Yeah. And that went on. And then when that funding was starting to run out, obviously people within that organisation were looking to the future and decide, right, how are we going to progress this when we can no longer do it because we've got no funding. They wanted local people to form their own groups. And we, within the Glenkens, formed a little group, the Glenkens Red Squirrel Group. And by good fortune, just after within about 6 months of us forming, the Galloway Glens Landscape Partnership came on stream. Yes. We applied for a grant. We were the first charitable organisation, to get funding from the Galloway Glens Landscape Partnership, for which we were very grateful. And that enabled us to buy more equipment, and we also were engaged in trapping the grey squirrels, because of course to conserve the red squirrel, we need to control the invasive grey squirrel.
Yes.
And I mean, don't get me wrong, I get no pleasure in killing grey squirrels, but the only thing that we can, the only way to eradicate them is to somebody kill them. And that's still going. We're still doing that. But the squirrel squirrel feeder that you mentioned, just up the B7000 out of the village, there are actually 2 squirrels regularly visiting that particular feeder. And the reason that we know that, quite simply, that there is 2 is that one's quite dark, almost black. Completely black, and the other one is a more traditional red squirrel. On one occasion, I've seen them both at the feeder at the same time.
Please.
But I was round there this morning. Wednesday morning is my feeding day, so I went round and filled up the 3 feeders that I have. There are 2 down by the Milton Park. And I regularly see squirrels down there. There are a couple of squirrels keep running across the road, which is always a bit worrying.
Yes.
Down by the Salmon Ladder, the Southern Upland Way. They cross over to the Douglases. I think they maybe raid the bird feeder or something. But in the wider area, we have got red squirrels throughout Earlston, Garrach, and up in the Forest Estate. There are, sadly, a few grey squirrels about, but not as many as there used to be.
Yeah.
And if anybody hasn't seen red squirrels, and I was talking to someone not that long ago, earlier this week, who I would probably say that he's in his 60s, and he's never seen a red squirrel. Now, if people have come to us when we've been doing a show, Stewardship show, and they've said, I've never seen a red squirrel. Now, I think that's a terrible indictment to the fact that people in England, there are generations, maybe 2 generations of people now in England, haven't seen a red squirrel. They regularly see grey squirrels, but not a red squirrel. And if you go to Bar Hill Woods, Kirkcudbright, you're pretty much guaranteed, if you spend maybe 10, 20 minutes, you will see a red squirrel from the hide within those woods. Threave Gardens is a good place to see them as well. Kirrochtry is also a place that you may see them.
For me, it's I don't remember seeing red squirrels growing up around here. It's only more recently that I started seeing them. And obviously, places we mentioned, Earlston. Carsphairn Community Woodland is actually one that I've seen a couple of times there as well. But it just brings joy actually seeing them running around.
When I was a kid, I saw red squirrels regularly. I used to play in the woods, and there was red squirrels. I had never seen. I was well into my late teens before I saw a grey squirrel. I didn't see grey squirrels, and I don't want my or future generations to not have that wonderful moment of seeing a red squirrel. They're so delightful, in my opinion, to have, and people who get them coming into their garden, sitting on their windowsill, almost, saying, "Hey, come on, it's breakfast time. It's breakfast time." It's really quite nice. But I also get pleasure out of thinking that from not only my efforts but the efforts of other people who are looking after conserving red squirrels, that they're giving pleasure to the likes of yourself, who are quite pleased to see these animals. And without our intervention, I don't think we would have the red squirrels around the locality that we have at the moment.
Well, I mean, even a few years ago, maybe as much as 10 years ago, you'd be more likely to see a grey squirrel going around that area than...
Well, when we started actively trapping grey squirrels. Within our first year of operation, we managed to dispatch over 400 grey squirrels. Now, the interesting thing is, if you speak to someone who is active, like yourself, in the countryside, and, you know, the question is, how many grey squirrels have you seen? And you say, well, you know, I remember seeing one about 2 months ago. To think that we've killed 400, you think, well, where did they come from? Now, what you've got to remember, and there is a slight difference, apart from their obvious colour and size, between reds and grey squirrels. Red squirrels are more arboreal, so they spend more time in the trees.
Yes.
Grey squirrels are a bit more sort of running around on the ground. But we as human beings, we look at our own eye level. We don't tend to lift our gaze.
Yes.
Now, if the red squirrel is up there and it just sits, you're not going to see it. You need to move, and you know, I suppose I've sort of trained myself to wander around. You might say it's a bit of a dangerous thing to do because you're not watching your feet, you're not watching where you put your feet. You need to look into the trees, look into the canopy. And at this time of year, it's quite easy to see squirrels in the trees. Of course, when the foliage is on the trees, deciduous trees, you don't see them. Yeah, you know, if people see red squirrels or grey squirrels, please report the sightings on the appropriate website. Saving Scotland Squirrels or Scottish Squirrels, put anything in your search engine and you'll come up with it. And it's a quite simple process, and it's worthwhile doing because it gives organisations like our group and all the other groups all over the south of Scotland, and there are now quite a few groups in England trying to sort of control, particularly in those few areas where they still have red squirrels, Northumberland, in Cumbria, Formby, a little sort of area of Lancashire, and there are red squirrels on the Isle of Wight, I believe, and Anglesey.
Anglesey was the one
where they've got them.
I suppose when the islands are cut off, so it's harder for grey squirrels.
It's much easier to control the sort of move. They can swim. I'm not going to say that they would swim across, you know, across a sea passage, but I was speaking with a friend really, who was paddleboarding on Loch Ken, and he saw a grey squirrel swimming in Loch Ken.
But if I remember correctly, I might be completely missing the point on this one, but Skye didn't have any grey squirrels till they put the bridge in.
I'm not sure. The problem is, and it's man. Well, of course, man introduced the grey squirrel from North America, but we now. When people move house, sometimes they move the grey squirrel with them. You know, when the removal van goes with all its cardboard boxes, somebody has taken the, and they're a bit of a pest, really. They're not something that you would really want to be introducing in a. They can make an awful mess of your loft. They get inside and they're not very good. Whereas red squirrels won't do that. They don't damage trees. Grey squirrels do a lot of damage to young trees. They strip the bark off, and then the tree dies. So there's a huge loss to the forest industry. So they do need to be controlled.
Yes. I remember in Leicester, there's a tree walk that goes from Victoria Park, which is kind of at the top of the city centre, and down to the city centre proper. And every day, if you walk along there, it's just grey squirrels everywhere. I mean, they're as common as the pigeons as you walk down along there. And they must have just multiplied really massively because it's easy food. Oh, and there people feed them as well.
Well, of course, Princess Street Gardens. You know,
Just any park in Edinburgh, to be
I
honest.
think how nice it would be if, the capital city of Scotland could advertise that you are seeing red squirrels. It would really. Maybe they don't want to double the visitor numbers.
somewhere on my camera from years ago, we were in Princess Street Gardens, and I got a whole load of photographs of a red squirrel and a magpie having a bit of a face-off over some food. And the squirrel was given as good as it got.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
They're quite feisty wee things.
So just pivoting back to kind of the outdoor side of things and the walking. Now, you've obviously inspired many of us, as we kind of touched on, and you maybe being a bit, we're just completely gone, but you have inspired a lot of people in the area to get out and explore, and especially the youth, through the scouting and just in general as well, because even you take us off on hikes as kids, and even when it wasn't scouting related, it was just kind of you going off for the hills and we want to come along. And nowadays you're obviously bringing that to a lot more people through the Newton Stewart Walking Festival. Now, I'm not sure if you were involved setting up or you've just been brought in, but could you tell us about the Newton Stewart Walking Festival? I believe it's happening in May?
Yes. The Newton Stewart Walking Festival, I think it was formed in about 2002. At that time, it was just a weekend festival. I got involved, I think, on the second or third of their programme. And then from there on, like many successful organisations, they went from a weekend to a full week. And the hill walks were always led by members of the mountain rescue team. And that's principally where I came in. And I think because of my experience of being in the police and living locally, it helped to add a bit of, I don't know, flavour to some of the walks. So yeah, I've led and been involved up until, well, the fateful years, the 2020 and 2021, they didn't have anything. They are operating from the 8th of May to the 14th of May. It's always the sort of second week in May. And a very good programme. And if anybody's interested in that programme, if they just put in Walkfest Newton Stewart or Walking Festival Newton Stewart,
We'll link out to our video. Yeah,
they'll come up with the programme, and there's always a variety of walks, from very strenuous, which are obviously the hill walks, the longer major hill walks. It's quite a challenge. And the beauty of the Walking Festival, in my opinion, is that for a very, I think it's about £12 now to pay for the coach, you get bused to the start and picked up at the finish. Now, for instance, if you're doing a linear walk, and a very popular linear walk is the Rins. So if you go from the southern end to the northern end, or the other way around, it doesn't really matter. If you and I were to do it, we would have to take a car to one end and then drive all the way to the other end and then walk and then drive up. The logistics, and in this day and age where we're trying to cut down on costs and fuel and fumes and what have you, it makes a lot of sense. And if you're not quick at getting in, getting your name down, the seats available for those longer walks very quickly get snapped up by local people, because they are the ones who want to do it, but they've never really got round to finding a friend, or you get your wife or your partner or whatever to take you to one end, and then you walk down to the other, and then they go and pick you up at the other end. So that is in my mind, a very big sort of bonus factor in doing it. And of course, over the years, they've almost, well, they have exhausted all the sort of hills and routes. And even if you do it like the Rins, you know, you can do it south to north, you can do it north to south, you can go up in the middle and go one way, and all these variations. You can do a circular walk clockwise or anti-clockwise. So they're almost now going back to the original sort of programs and saying, what did we do? All right, well, we can do that again, because it's been that long since. So the people who are going to be signing up for this year won't have done it 20 odd years ago. And people travel for quite a distance to come to Newton Stewart to do the walking festival. And I've never been to a walking festival, so I can't compare it to any other walking festival. But those who regularly go to other festivals sort of really recommend Newton Stewart. It's well run, well organised, and the sort of leadership is always very good. Yeah, that's and this year I'm taking a walk from Mossdale through to New Galloway.
Right.
A walk I think you've done on your YouTube.
Yes. And we did it. In fact,
did it.
Yeah, we did it a wee while. We were just because it was one of the walks that we did for the talk that we did at the Catstrand. We did all of them. Well, we didn't actually do all of them, because we didn't do the Waterside Hill one, because we've both done that so many times that we didn't feel that we needed to do that. But we did the Pack Road and we did the Mossdale New Galloway. It's a good walk, that.
Yeah.
Get some great views over Loch Ken. Got some really good drone footage.
Well, you can from that viewpoint. It just looks down the length of the loch.
Yeah, it's lovely.
And because they've cut more trees down, you get a better view now as you're walking along the track.
Yeah.
And then down at Loch Strone as well.
Oh,
It's
Loch
kinda-
Strone
I love
Loch Strone is a dream, to paddle a canoe through Loch Strone and then up the Dee.
Yes.
About as far as Barney Water. You can get almost to the bridge at Barney Water, depending on how much water's coming down. It's really quite nice with the ospreys.
Oh yes. Ospreys, isn't it? We are very fortunate with the amount of wildlife that we still actually have. And in fact the reintroduction of some of them as well. I noticed that, you know, after the kites were reintroduced, there was a definite dip in the amount of buzzards that you would see. There was a definite dip, but then they came back up again.
Well, funnily enough, my wife was mentioning that the other day, that she'd seen a buzzard, and we used to see buzzards, you know, 7 on thermals over the garden.
Yeah.
And then, as you say, when the kites were introduced in 2001, I think they were hidden in the secret cages at the time, and then eventually it might have been 2002 before they were actually released into the countryside. But that, you know, that's a success story in many ways, and maybe we should sort of come to Galloway and see the 3 reds: the red kites, the red squirrels, and the red deer.
Nice.
That's actually quite a good idea.
But no, I like the red kites though, but I do like the buzzards as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when you hear the red kites circling and whistling, doing that whistle that sounds a bit like a shepherd.
Yeah.
That took me a while to get used to, because I didn't realise that was the noise they made until oh right, that's the bird.
Yeah. Sort of whistle.
Yeah, so we know in the Galloway Hills that the weather can just turn on a sixpence. What's the most uncomfortable experience you've actually had of the weather, do you think, when you've been out there? Just more as a sort of cautionary tale and warning.
Well, I think it's fair to say I've been wet, I've been cold, I've been blown around. The weather can change very quickly, and I think it's sensible before you go out to check. And we're very fortunate, in fact, that within our area here, we have the Mountain Weather Information Service. That it comes basically out of Lauriston, and it's a national facility. You can get a very good forecast for the area of hills that you're going into, and it's pretty accurate. Very useful facility, but nobody has convinced me yet that they're absolutely spot on with the weather forecast. So you can have one day where you think that you're going to have an absolutely horrendous day, but you're still going to go, and it turns out fine. That doesn't matter. It's when it's the other way around, when you think you're going to get, a wonderful view, and you don't get a wonderful view. And I remember, actually, we go back to the Newton Stewart Walking Festival. I remember being on the Rins with a party, and there was another party on Merrick, and we were in radio contact, and the weather changed. And when I say the weather changed, it really changed. It was thundering, and it's not often we get thunder and lightning around here, but it really was dreadful. And we had hail. I'm standing there with walking poles. I'd got a radio stuck in my rucksack with a big aerial, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, there's lightning here. I'm just a walking lightning conductor. And I got really, really quite concerned, and made sure that the party were close together and what they should do. And we completed the walk, but it was very much a case of keeping in contact and watching what was happening, and we could see across when momentarily the cloud cleared, and you could sort of see, and then say, I can see you, and then the curtains closed, and you could no longer see, and so sort of memorable occasions. I've been blown over a few times, and I remember going on to Windy Standard. Now, Windy Standard. Why do they call it Windy Standard? Because it can get windy. and I'd walked on from Lorg, so I was able to follow the old sort of the county boundary really, and there was a fence line, and I was literally holding on to the fence to keep myself upright. If the fence hadn't been there, I would have been blown, I don't know where. To me, it makes the hill. When you go on a hill and you get blue sky and sunshine, that is not the normal, in my opinion, not the normal weather for a hill. The normal weather is certainly a stiff breeze, and if it's raining, or you can have that wonderful wetness where you don't think it's raining, but you're absolutely soaking. It's just a sort of and it's invigorating though. And why do we spend a fortune on clothing? A good waterproof jacket, over trousers, good pair of boots, if you're never going to put them to the test. I'm not going to say that if the forecast is a red warning and your phone has given that national alert, that you get your rucksack and you go out. That would be sheer folly. But I think that and certainly when I was involved in mountain rescue, I used to think that you needed to experience those conditions to know what you were going to be doing when you got there in reality. There would be no point in going up into the hills to try and rescue somebody if you didn't know what it was like. I think there's you've got to sort of put the whole things into context to make it sort of worthwhile and really make it make sense.
That makes sense, definitely.
Just applying some common sense in general.
And a bit of experience, or a good bit of experience.
Yeah.
It's like, don't go up by yourself in those situations necessarily. It's like you've got other people. And
well, I think I've probably broken all the rules in the book in terms of, yes, I spend a lot of time in the hills on my own. And some people say, well, you shouldn't go on your own. But life is for living, I'm sorry.
oh, sure.
I'd say, yeah.
And
Right.
with you, for example, former police, former mountain rescue, you've got the experience and the knowledge. Like, I will go up into some hills by myself, but if I've not been up in those higher hills for a long time, I'm going to be more hesitant to go by myself just because I don't know them as well as I used to in some cases, or if I've never been up them, and I'm just out of practice. So I'd build up before I'd go and do something like that by myself. Whereas, this is somebody that has grew up in the hills and things like that. So there is definitely that element of go with what your experience is and what your knowledge is, and it's like, and sometimes it's just a case of, am I being silly here? Am I going to put somebody else at risk? Like, for example, went to go up to Black Craig Wind Farm a couple of months ago. We get up there and the road was sheet ice. It's kind of like, well, I could probably do it, but if I do fall, somebody else then has to try and come to me. And
That's always the thing that you've got to consider, that you're in control of yourself up to the point where you reach that situation, and then you say, hey, look, this is where I turn round, and that's good. We all have the mountain will be there tomorrow. Will you be there tomorrow? If you don't make the right decision, then but no, I think it's the mountaineer Hinks. He has this mantra, if you like, that the getting back is mandatory. Getting to the top is obligatory. Is that the right way around? Yeah. No. Yes. Yeah.
You've got to get home.
Yeah. Survival is more important than
so getting to the top is optional, but
yeah.
Getting to the back is mandatory. Getting home is mandatory. Yes, makes sense. No, that's a good piece of advice, definitely, or a good thing to have in mind when you go out walking. Yes, absolutely.
So we talked about a lot of hiking. You've touched on kind of canoeing on Loch Strone and a bit of cycling. Is there any, other than hiking obviously, is there any other outdoor activities like cycling or canoeing that you'd recommend in any particular locations that you'd recommend doing them in the region?
Well, I think anybody who has a bike or a gravel bike, mountain bike, then to cycle around Clattering Shores is certainly going to be worthwhile. Cycling simply down the Raiders Road, and you can sort of, when you get down to Loch Strone, instead of coming out and then going down the road back towards New Galloway, you can actually cut off and come basically sort of towards Cairn Edward, down past the Lowran burn and along, and come out at the Knocknailing sort of road down the Barn Road end, and even cycling around Forest Estate, all the named roads in there, go up the Garrett Glen, across and come back down the Forest Glen. Is I think cycling around here is just idyllic. The whether you go on the road or as I say on a mountain bike, you could pick up we've got the N7, we've got the off-road N7, and then we've got the byways. They all come through the area, and you can link. You can follow the byway from the village here towards Moniaive, and then however far you want to go is entirely up to yourself and your energy levels, and look on a map and route yourself back through Corsic, and then back along down the hidden road is wonderful cycling country. It's, and canoeing, we've got Loch Kent, 9 miles long. That's a wonderful opportunity for canoeing. Loch Strawn is easily accessible from the Raiders Road, and Woodhall Loch. These are all wonderful lochs that you can canoeing, and even clattering shores. Now some people say that you can't canoe on clattering shores because it belongs to, it's the hydro. But responsible access, there's nothing to stop you actually going onto clattering shores. And strangely, for all the times I've passed clattering shores, I've only ever once seen somebody on the loch in a canoe.
I was there. Now we were there about. It must have been back end of last year, and there was a couple of guys on the loch. For whatever reason, they were in really sort of like zebra print canoes with covers. I don't know why.
I often think, the number of photographs I've actually got of clattering shores with the reflections and everything.
Oh, yes.
If somebody had a yacht, and no doubt you can do this with whatever they call it, artificial intelligence, put a yacht into your image. I wouldn't want to do that. But I think if somebody had a small sailing dinghy and put it out on the loch, you would get some fantastic images.
Yes, and you get some quite good winds coming off the hills there as well. So you'd be zipping about quite the thing, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but it's it is a good area. The whole of and we've got the Seven Stains. You can go to Glentrool or Giroctree. These are all and to go from. I used to go from here and cycle all the way to Giroctree and then have a coffee and a Mars bar scone, and then cycle back in the knowledge that the calories that the Mars bar scone had given me would fuel me for my journey back.
You're not putting your weight on with that.
And that was before they made the new. That was in the old cafe at the time. So I'm going back a wee bit.
It's quite nice visitor centre there now as well.
Yeah.
And there's the bicycle repair shop and everything that's there. Which is quite handy. For people cycling in the area. You've lived here an awfully long time. Have you got any recommendations of places in Galloway for people who might be actually listening to the podcast or watching it from outside the region? Where would be your first place to go, basically?
I think that the Raiders Road is always a favourite of mine. It's has so many attractions to it. The Otter's Pool is the obvious place to stop. Strawn Loch. It's just a stunning route, and I'm so pleased that the Forestry Commission opened it up as a route. So that's certainly a place to visit. Giroctree Visitor Centre is another ideal location, whether you're into mountain biking, walking, simply enjoying wildlife. Go down to the hide there and have a look. Kirkcudbright as a town, for those who want to visit a town, then Kirkcudbright has got to be a place to visit. And while you're there, nip up to Bar Hill Woods and have a look, see if you can see the red squirrels. But Kirkcudbright has that quality, and it's not known as the artist town for nothing. It does have a certain quality of light, and if you get the opportunity coincides with some of the fishing boats being in at the harbour, that always adds interest to me when I go somewhere and there's something like boats in at the harbour if you're elsewhere, and I just think that the whole area is worth coming. But as far as picking out something that's specifically going to be good, then just driving along the Queensway, you know, from New Galloway right through to Newton Stewart, and you know, you're going to pass Clattering Shores,
Red Deer Park,
Murray's Monument, all these.
The Grey Mare's Tail there as well.
Yeah. It's really nice.
And so many lovely walks around there till Knobtree and round the back to the Black Loch and other those places.
Yeah. See the sculptures there, the quorum.
Yes.
Those.
Which can be a bit creepy.
Well, they can, and in actual fact, I went there once, and I thought, wait a minute, somebody's pinched one. Well, they've moved it. One of the heads is not now where it used to be. It's been moved, and I don't know whether, you know, I don't think it's a good idea to do that, but it's it is a bit. They are a bit creepy.
They're creepy, but they're also quite. I mean, in a way, I feel like as a piece of art, it's kind of speaking to all the people that used to live in the area. You know, the people who've gone. So it's, you know, that sense that there used to be more people in remote places like this, and it's almost like they're sort of harking back to that, obviously.
Well, I think the other thing about, you know, where the quorum is, those heads in that big sheep sort of dip thing, and now you know, that is within a huge expanse of forest, so it tells you that at one time there were sheep here, and of course Murray. His Dunkitterick, that was a shepherd's cottage. So, you know, the shepherd, by definition, had sheep. So, yeah.
He was definitely a shepherd's boy done good. Murray of Murray's Monument. Fascinating person.
It's funny with the quorum because so I'm been recording up there, and the first time round I somehow totally missed the quorum. So I'll be going back up and kind of recording a filler bit there. But it was interesting because I was reading about it, and the artist has always refused to say what the faces are saying. It's for your own interpretation. It's so you can take it as you wish.
Well, of course, yeah.
I think the best art's like that, because we all see different things anyway.
If it has to be explained to you, is it really?
It doesn't speak to you if it has to be explained to you. Absolutely. And just as a sort of final question, Andy already spoke about the what's it called, Lagan Hall?
The Lagan Lodge.
Lagan Lodge, that's right. And wondering what happened with that. Is there anything you've ever come across in your travels through Galloway that you thought, what on earth is that? Because or where's that come from? That maybe people who are watching or people who are listening might actually know more about. Is there a sort of like a Galloway mystery or a Galloway conundrum, as we call it, you might have?
One thing that always slightly amuses me, to be honest, and I don't know why it is, and because I don't profess to be an expert on the English language, but why do we talk about the Merrick? We never, really, you know, people go for a walk, or they go, and I'm going up the Merrick.
You don't go up Merrick, you
go up the Merrick.
Yes,
you don't, you know, putting it the other way, we don't go up the Carsphairn.
No.
But we go up the Mulloch.
Yes.
Or the
so
Ben.
why have these two hills
You've got that particular.
got the in front of them?
Well, the only bit of insight I could give to that is that I know that Mulloch in Gaelic essentially means top or summit. So as a hill, if you were calling it just going to summit doesn't really make sense, if you know what I mean. You're going to the summit because
you're going to the summit.
Because it's a particularly so maybe there's a similar explanation as to why. But that's just my guess.
No.
Somebody probably knows way better than me. So do let us know in the comments of that.
Well, yeah, you know, I always smile when I read whatever, you know, however Merrick comes into the script. It very often is the Merrick, the Merrick,
Yes.
and I
It's not like
I
we
just
say-
think it's interesting as to why that. The other. I don't suppose anybody's got any real idea, or maybe the person that's got the answer won't come forward and let me know. But a few years ago, I had gone onto Cairns Garach with another person, and on the way up, I was waxing lyrical about the Shepherd's Cairn that was on the top of Cairns Garach. When I got there, it's not there.
Oh,
And this was a well-built cairn. And I remember the first time I went on to Mule and then walked down to the Kingswell and then up onto Cairns Garach. There was this cairn, nicely built, and you could always see it when you looked across this wonderful. It was about 1.5 meters high, 4 sort of square section, slightly tapering towards the top. But it's not there now, and there isn't a pile of stones
well,
where,
that's very mysterious.
you know, so it's not collapsed. My interpretation is it has physically been moved. Now, whether the stone was useful for a project somewhere, but the only way you're going to move that stone is with a vehicle, and the only vehicle you can get there would be a quad bike or a helicopter.
That is very mysterious.
And it's still marked on the map. There's still a little dot and the word Shepherd's Cairn on the 1 to 25 thou map. It's still marked,
Yes.
but the cairn is not there.
Well, if
Or maybe I'm dreaming. So maybe if there are viewers out there who've been up Cairns Garach, and so maybe when I went there, I was in a dream.
well, look, that would be an interesting thing to find out.
But
Do please tell us. 'Cause it'd be-
it's you know, it's just one of these things that you've been on. I've probably been there 3 or 4 times physically to the cairn. I've been right along the ridge, you know, from Carlin's Cairn, Mule, Bow, Coroner Port Mark, and looked across and seen it. But now it's not there.
That's definitely one.
A dilemma.
A definite conundrum.
A missing Shepherd's Cairn.
Shepherd's Cairn. And on that note, Bob, thank you very, very much.
It's been my
wonderful.
It's been my pleasure.
And it's been
my pleasure.
enlightening and fascinating as ever. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, that was a fascinating discussion with Bob and learned a lot, including with a bit from my conundrum from the last episode.
Who'd have thought, eh? You should have asked Bob in the first place. He knows everything.
Yes, he does.
Yes, he does. It's been a really interesting episode. Really hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. If you have any contributions for Concerning Core Paths or for Cultural Gleanings or anything, in fact, to do with the podcast, drop us a line on Talking Galloway Podcast at protonmail.com or put a comment in the comments below, absolutely. And we'll get back to you ASAP.
And thank you.
And yeah, thank you. Goodbye. See you next time.
Music, Bonnie Gallowa, arranged by Anne Chaurand, performed by Anne Chaurand and Faith. Finally, if you'd like to support us, you can do so via Buy Me a Coffee, link will be in the description, or if you're a business local to Galloway and would would like to sponsor us, please reach out to us at talkinggallowaypodcast@protonmail.com.